and we are live from nowhere.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Before we start, we wanted to let you guys know about a new arrival here at headquarters. We found Steven here, collapsed out in the desert a few days ago. He's only been speaking gibberish so far, but we've been getting to know him anyway. From what we can tell, he is a family. He was found in a dark blue jumpsuit, and his favorite color is fish, apparently. So reach out. But until we can find out where he comes from, Steven's going to be working the soundboards here in the studio with us. We'll keep you guys updated.
Welcome to the show, Steve. Our tale tonight is titled The Hunter. When he loses control over his normal life, a desperate man escapes to his childhood cabin in the woods, seeking a fresh start. But beware, for these woods are home to more than just men. Now gather round, grab some snacks, and enjoy the story.
My dad used to tell me that you're either the hunter or the hunted. So it's only fitting that he should be the one to teach me how to do the former. I still remember the time I claimed my first 12-point buck, a trophy buck like you've never seen. It was up in the mountains near our place. We had a cabin way up there, away from the world. It was beautiful in those days, a dream home for a huntsman. My dad had woken me up. I remember it being so early it was still dark. He told me if we were going to bank a big one, we'd need to get out early. We sat on the perch for hours. No sound, no movement, nothing but our breath and our heartbeat. The feeling of staring through a scope and holding another creature's life in your hands. It's a powerful sensation. You are the hunter. You're in control. It became a way of life. An escape from everything the world could throw at us. We'd have a campfire and my dad would tell me about the fierce bear that roamed the woods around our cabin. It was an old grizzly with a missing eye and more scars than fur. According to legend, it walked the trail for generations, emerging from its cave at night to look for prey. Some years back, one of the hunters who lived on the mountain became arrogant and ventured out into the woods at midnight, claiming he wasn't scared of the dark. The next day, he was found mangled and dead at the foot of a large oak tree, with a trail of heavy bear tracks leading from the corpse. That would show you, my dad would say. It doesn't do to get drunk on your own confidence. There's always a bigger beast that'll take that charge if you let it. School wasn't a good fit for me. I never really paid attention, and the other kids made my life miserable. There was this one kid, a real brute, who routinely went out of his way to torment me and make high school hell. After all was said and done, my grades weren't good enough for any state school, so I went to my town's community college. After graduation, I wanted to stay in my hometown, but could only find a decent job by moving away to the city. The job itself isn't anything special. A typical 9-to-5 slog as an office drone, stuck inside one of these endless cubicle farms, catering to a boss who himself is just catering to the boss above him, and so on. The move made it hard to stay by my old hunting grounds, so mostly I kept up with my shooting at the range near my apartment complex. After a tiring week, my only relief is when I head down to the corner of 40th and Maple, where the grip of my rifle feels just as natural as those far-gone weekends from my childhood. But everything's too restrictive there. A cramped city building with those nauseating fluorescent hospital lights is no substitute for the fresh air of a mountain trail. But it didn't take much to topple everything I had built. When I walked into work on Friday, I found a stack of boxes piled next to my cubicle, which was empty. Looking around, I saw several of my coworkers carrying similar boxes out to the street. My boss, ever the hero, sat cowering in his office with his blinds shuttered. Without another word, I grabbed my boxes and stormed towards the door along with the rest of the layoffs. On my way out, I saw a familiar face walking back towards the entrance. It was that brute from high school, with his resume in hand. He was wearing a brand new suit fresh off the department store mannequin. He didn't even recognize me as I walked by. Losing my job meant I needed to find a new place to live. I was already way behind on my rent. I knew that once my landlord found out about the layoffs, I was done for. I drove through the crowded city streets in a panic. Where would I live? Where would I find a job? The economy was only getting worse, but as I was fighting off a nervous breakdown at the intersection of 52 and 4th, I had an incredible idea. As far as I knew, my dad still owned that cabin in the woods. That's where I could go, far away from the constant noise, the pollution, and those sickening fluorescent lights. I'd figure out how to build my life again. I'd go out and hunt on the weekends. This could be a good thing. This could be what I've been missing. I left the city that same day. I parked my car in a rocky alcove at the start of the path. Gulping down a bottle of water, I grabbed my gear and locked the door before starting up the slope. My favorite part of the woods as a kid was always the chirping of the birds in the trees. It brought life to the forest. But walking up the trail, things are strangely quiet. I don't see any animals either. No deer, no birds, not even a squirrel. Maybe a storm's coming. The weather can change on a dime up here. A few hours in, I start to sense a weird vibe, almost pulsing from the trees. It feels like there's someone following me, like eyes are watching me from behind. When I stop to listen, though, I don't hear anything. Just me in the woods. Maybe I'm just tired. It's been a long drive. As I reach the midway point to the cabin, I decide to set up my tent for the night. It's getting dark, and I need shelter. I set down my gear and start to clear a path and set up my tent. I wake up during the night to the sound of crunching leaves. It's too dark to read my watch, but by the looks of it, it's probably around 2 a.m. At first, I don't give it too much thought. Typically, fox, deer, and even raccoons move around in the woods at night. Drowsily, my eyelids fall shut and I drift back to sleep. I wake up again to the same noises. Becoming concerned, I sit up in my sleeping bag, and the sound goes still. I lay back down, listening intently. I don't hear anything else, but it feels as if whatever was outside of the tent is still there, sitting, waiting, watching. There's that weird feeling again. Eventually, I nod off, but I don't get much rest. I wake up at 5 a.m. and unzip the tent. The sun's up, and the birds are chirping. It's gonna be a good day. Whatever it was nosing around last night, it's gone by morning. I've still got a long walk up to the cabin, so I put out what's left of the fire, take down another energy bar, and start back up again. I reach the cabin around noon. It's far from the place I remember. The structure's fallen into complete disrepair. There's moss and vegetation covering the porch, and the walls are completely overgrown with vines and brush. The inside is even worse. It looks like nothing's been touched in 15 years. Every surface is covered in a layer of dust thick enough to choke on. The only things still working are the electricity and the water, which is probably a miracle in itself. But on the bright side, the doors and the windows are still secure. There aren't any animals living here, far as I could see. I managed to make the cabin livable again in a little over 5 hours, but it's worth it. When I see the cabin return to its former glory, it begins to remind me of my childhood and all the good times I had here. Feels like home. Being back makes me want to hunt again. I eat a quick dinner and grab my pack, setting out into the woods. I walk down all the old trails, scoping out my area, trying to get the lay of the land, seeing if there's any tracks or activity nearby. I can't wait for tomorrow. As a kid, hunting out here made me feel powerful. Back in the city, I was a feather in the wind. Here, I control my own fate. The sun begins to set, and the sky darkens. As I walk back into the cabin, I start to get that weird feeling again, like something is following me, watching me. It's been following me this whole time. I just need a good night's sleep. The nights out here will drive you mad, or get you killed. Best to wait till morning. Later that night, I wake up to the same crunching sounds outside. Maybe I'm just paranoid, but whatever it is, sounds like it's getting closer. I wake up the next morning at the crack of dawn. I quickly get ready, grabbing an energy bar and water, before slinging my pack on my back, grabbing my rifle, and heading out. I start down one of my usual paths, following a set of fresh deer tracks through the forest. However, the tracks disappear into the bush, and I lose them quickly. No worries. I head back onto the path and find a set of fox tracks running down a large open field. But to my disappointment, they stop mid-field, and soon I lose them as well. The rest of the morning goes no better. It seems that any tracks I notice quickly elude me. Frustrated, I take a sloppy aim at a rabbit and miss horribly. The stray shot echoes through the trees and certainly scares off any animal within a 5-mile radius. I eat lunch in a forest of petrified trees, annoyed by my lack of progress. I used to be so good at this. Now, I'm barely catching anything. Maybe I've lost it. My life's always been out of my control. Not getting into college, moving to the city, being fired. Now I can't even control the woods long enough to even catch a rabbit. I'm not a hunter. But maybe I can be now. I noticed some broken branches in the thicket next to the boulder where I was sitting. Whatever passed through here was big, judging by the prints and the height of the branches it brushed up against. After some searching, I come across a similar, fresher set of tracks nearby. Immediately, I perk up. The game is on. The tracks led away from the forest down the mountain. Making sure to stay quiet, I pursue them as fast as I can. It leads me down the mountain and across the valley. By late afternoon, I've nearly caught the animal. Stopping to catch my breath, I take a moment to think about what it is I'm chasing. Judging by the size and the distance between the prints, this was a bear. Maybe one of the biggest ever recorded. It could be a 900-pounder by the depths of the tracks, but I can't be sure. Boy, if I caught one of those, well, that'd change everything. It'd certainly be the fresh start I need. But of course, it can never be that easy. By the evening, the trail wanders off into a busy stream and disappears. Seeing it, I stand at the river's edge and stare in disbelief. Here was possibly the biggest catch of my life, and it turns out just to be another dead end. Again, I don't have control. I needed this bear. I needed this fresh start. But instead, it's all just another piece of my pattern? Or was it? No, not this time. Defiantly, I lift my head and start off down the river, searching for paw prints. This bear is not getting away. This time, I will be the hunter. A few hundred feet down the riverbank, I see the trail reemerge and run after it. An hour later, I see the sun disappearing into the sky. Daylight is fading, but I don't care. If I'm going back with a bear over my shoulders. I descend deeper and deeper into the darkness. My rifle is in one hand and my dimming flashlight in the other. I'm not scared of the night anymore. The night is upon me. I creep over the foliage. My path is lit only by the moon. I'm close now. As I stop to catch my breath again, I hear it. The leaves crunching behind me. I freeze and turn around, staring right into a yellow, reflective eye, which peers down at me from the top of the ridge. It's the bear. Suddenly, I come to my senses. I don't stop to think. I take off running in the direction of the home, sprinting for what feels like ages. The trees and the brush rip at my clothes like horrid claws. In the distance, I can hear it. This bear is closing in behind me. The sound of heavy paws pounding after me, eating the ground faster and faster. I can hear its breath huffing and growling. As I run, I try to load a round into the chamber of my rifle. I drop the round and keep running. Quickly, I grab another one and jam it in. I turn around and fire just as it tears out of the woods. The single largest bear I have ever laid eyes on. I shoot. Shocked by the sound, the horrid beast veers to the left and runs back into the woods. I use the opportunity to hide under a nearby bush. I hear a deep moan in the distance. I must have hit it. I lie there for a few minutes, trying to catch my breath. My heart feels like it's going to burst out of my chest. This isn't the time to panic. This is a time to think. The bear is wounded now, but I need to make sure it's really dead. I walk towards the moan, holding my loaded rifle firm on my shoulder, inching ever closer to the spot, making sure not to make any noise. Suddenly, an ugly, hulking, dark shape rams into me from the side. My gun is knocked clean from my hand, landing several feet away. Its yellow eye stares at me straight in the face as I fly back. The bear leaps at me, its jaws wide open, teeth gnashing, saliva dripping as it growls. I take one final moment to realize once and for all how I have become, once more, the hunted. Hi everyone, hope you enjoyed this episode. We're the Live from Nowhere podcast, bringing you original stories every other week. This episode was the second of our first season, which will have 10 episodes. This week's story, The Hunter, was written by Zach Zadie and voiced by Zach Zadie. Story editing was done by Carl Kutsia. The show is edited by Zach Zadie and scored by Carl Kutsia. If you want text versions of the stories, those will be available soon. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and YouTube. If you enjoy our stories, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for all the latest updates. We'll see you next week.